Welcome to the Fine Arts Work Center online event, The Path to Publication. My name is Jennifer Jean. I'm the Senior Program Manager of FAWC Online. That's the Fine Arts Work Center online program, formerly known as 24PearlStreet. Welcome. Feel free to turn your cameras on. We'd love to see your faces. Or not, that's fine too. I'm just going to do a little bit of business to start and then make introductions and then turn things over to our wonderful guests tonight. If you have any tech troubles, feel free to enter into the chat and send me a direct message. Or if you have questions about the Fine Arts Work Center programming or anything having to do with Fine Arts Work Center events of any kind or future projects, send me a direct message through the chat. You can also send me an email at jjean@fawc.org. And again, if you get knocked out, you can definitely email me. As you entered this Zoom room, you probably noticed that and probably heard that the event is being recorded. This recording will be sent to you. So if you get knocked out at any point, don't worry, you're going to get the full recording later and it'll be up on the Fine Arts Work Center YouTube channel as well for easy location. All right, so now what I'm going to do is introduce our guests for tonight. And I'll start with our interviewer, who is Zibby Owens, bestselling author of Blank, a novel, Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, Princess Charming, and the forthcoming novel Overheard. She's the editor of 3 anthologies on Being Jewish Now, Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids, and Moms Don't Have Time to, a quarantine anthology. Zibby has regularly contributed to Good Morning America, Vogue, Oprah Daily, and many other outlets. She's the founder and CEO of Zibby Media, which includes Zibby Books, boutique publishing house, Zibby's Bookshop, an independent bookstore in Santa Monica, California. I've heard a lot of good things about that place, as well as the award-winning daily podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, Zibby's Books Club, and Zibby's Retreats for Book Lovers. She currently lives in New York as well as in Los Angeles with her husband, Kyle Owens of Morning Moon Productions, and along with her 4 children there. We are joined by debut authors who are wonderful people. I loved meeting them, and I hope to get to know them even better through tonight and hopefully later as well. I'll start with Nanda Reddy, who is a Guyanese American writer and former elementary school teacher. She immigrated to the US with her family when she was 9 years old and grew up in Miami, Florida. She loves visiting off-the-grid places, hiking, and painting with watercolor. She currently resides in Reno, Nevada with her husband and teenage sons. A Girl Within a Girl Within a Girl is her first novel, which we'll be talking about tonight. As well, we're joined by Sarah Sawyer, who is an English teacher who lives and works at a boarding school in Western Massachusetts, where she finds endless humor and inspiration in her colleagues and students. She's a graduate of Amherst College and the Breadloaf School of English. The Undercurrent is her first novel, and she will be talking about that novel tonight. Please join me in welcoming Zibby, Nanda, and Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for being here. I'm thrilled to be here with 2 authors who I just adore, Sarah Sawyer and Nanda Reddy, and both of whom, by the way, I published at my company, Zibby Books. Now we're calling it Zibby Publishing, but they are the most amazing debut authors. And even though we were joking before that, we're not exactly spring chickens publishing, I guess, in our 40s, but I think in our 40s, it has been, even though it's been a windy path to publication, it's here. So it all ends up, doesn't matter how long it takes when someday it just sort of happens. So I would love for both Sarah and Nanda to share their story. I also, as a preface, it took me a very long time to try to sell a book. My first book was published by my grandparents as a little miniature book when I was 9, my first 2 short stories. And I had my name on the spine and like little gold lettering. And I decided, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an author. Done. I don't have to debate it. And I'll be the youngest published novelist around. I've already started at age 9. And anyway, my novel finally came out, what, last year, I think. So it's been a windy road for me. And many times I wanted to give up, but I didn't. So I can come back to my story. But uh, yeah, it's all about not giving up, I think, is basically the ticket. It's like I don't know if this is a really bad analogy. Has anyone seen the movie Wildcats with Goldie Hawn? It came out like in the 80s. Anyway,
Yes.
bad reference, but there's a scene where Goldie Hawn is like racing the football team around the track, these big strong guys who are like so fit, and she's this like mom of two just like trying to get out there, and turns out she leaves them in the dust just because she can keep going. And it doesn't mean she's stronger than them or faster than them or anything, but she just kept going. And so she won. So I feel like that is the metaphor for trying to be an author. You just like stay on that track, and no matter how many rainstorms or how many faster people or more talented people or anything, if you're still on the track, you've got a good shot at making it. So anyway, Sarah, why don't you go first?
Sure. So it's hard. I don't know where exactly to start, but I can say that I never wrote anything longer than a poem until I was 40. And not counting, your eighth grade short story assignment or something. But I really loved writing poetry a lot, and I wrote a good amount of it. I would not say it was very good, but I did do that. And then when I turned 40, I had an idea for a story, and it just sort of started rolling around in my mind and stuck there. And I wrote that book and tried to get an agent, and I didn't get an agent. And then I wrote another book, and I got an agent for that book, but didn't sell that book. And then I wrote The Undercurrent after revising the other book. Really a lot of steps to having the book published. And I think when I tell people and that's not even all the steps, but if I when I tell people all the steps, they're sort of like, well, why did you keep going? And it was one of those things, like, I never really thought I would get anything published, and I just really wanted to try to see if I could do a thing. And then, you get kind of closer, a step closer. I was like, well, look at me, I did write a book. And then, oh, wait, I did get an agent. And oh, wait, well, now that I'm this far, I might as well just kind of keep going. And in that process, I think the whole time I just noticed about myself that I loved just writing the story. It's lovely to be published, and I think it's been really fun. We were just talking before we started about what that feels like, but it's a different thing than writing. Going around and talking about your book is delightful. Meeting people and all that. But to me, the very best part is when I'm sitting at this desk that I'm sitting at right now, and thinking about the story and kind of in the story. So that's the most exciting part, actually, for me. And I think kind of keeping my head on that part is I think what I don't know, would give a writer endurance to get. It's a disappointment game. You might email 50 agents and hear back from one, right? Or you might submit your book and it might not get, bought by anybody. And it's like baseball. You're going to fail a lot before you ever hit the ball, right? So I think just sort of having a perspective on that and keeping an eye on what is actually the important part, which is the writing. Is good. But yeah, I have more to say about, kind of the nitty-gritty of those parts, but that's the basic gist of the story.
Amazing. And yet I find sometimes sitting at the desk the hardest part, the part I try to sort of
I
run
agree.
away
I
from
don't
too.
I don't love sitting. Sitting is hard. I do we can talk more about this too later, but like to write, to get myself to sit, because I'm a terrible sitter, I do have like little timers. I make myself sit for like an hour, and then I go do something else because I just can't. Yeah,
mean,
it's too hard.
I don't mind sitting. It's just so much easier to respond to like 100 emails than
Oh, me, it's the actual sitting. I'm just kidding.
yeah. The couch is lovely. I'm fine. Happy. All right, Nanda, tell us about your path to publication.
Yeah, so I mean, same as you, it took a long time to get here, both of you. For me, I wasn't 9 when I wrote my first little book, and I didn't know I wanted to write when I was 9. When I was 9, I came to this country, and I was introduced to libraries, and so it was kind of when I first started to read. And I didn't really think about writing until maybe high school. I had teachers who praised my writing, and then a teacher kind of wrangled me into doing the uh, literary magazine, like kind of editing it, but it was because no one else wanted to. I went to one of those kind of inner city high schools, or not inner city, suburban Miami, but inner city feel high school, that no one wanted to do it. So I did it. And that was maybe when I had glimmers of maybe I could write. I'm kind of embarrassed. I sort of put a few of my own poems in there under pen names because I was like, this is better than what I was getting, which is so awful. But I didn't want to submit anything under my own name because that just felt, anyway, it was I've never revealed that to anyone. I don't know why I just told you guys all that. But I didn't actually think about writing as a career until an idea for a story came to me in college. I was taking just kind of creative writing classes here and there for fun. I never thought I would do that. I would use my scholarship in college to pursue writing because it felt like a waste. So I just kind of did it secretly. And when a story idea came to me, I thought, well, why not me? And why not write the story? And that was when I started looking into craft books and that journey, because there are a zillion craft books out there. And I started writing. I never went back and got the MFA. I was a teacher. Unlike Sarah, I didn't stick with it. I ended up staying home to raise my kids after they were born, and never really went back. I did write a book for teachers, and then never went back to teaching, even though I thought about it and expected myself to. I just wrote, but even though I kept writing, I didn't ever finish anything to the point of where it was polished enough for publication. And I just kept getting older. And it was when COVID hit that I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to, this dream of mine might die, and we might all die. And I just got to try. And there's that thing, where Zibby says, sitting in front, it's scary to sit with the computer and write the thing and then like print it out and be like, do you like it? With COVID, it kind of freed me because I thought, who cares if anyone likes it or if it doesn't get published or whatever? I just got to at least try to get the best work done that I could finally. And so this, I went back and read, this is A Girl Within a Girl Within a Girl. I thought maybe I should have a copy. Sarah, you probably should have a copy of your book too, to show everyone. Anyway, I ended up here because I really worked at it. And I could go through all the little nitty-gritty things because I was a stay-at-home mom, very unconnected from the world. I don't have a huge literary group in Reno. And so if you're in that kind of world and you want to know where to start, I was there too, where I was Googling, how do you write a query letter? How do you find agents? And how do you connect with other writers? I was right there with you not that long ago. So
I have to say, a number of people lately who have been on my podcast have told me that they have Googled how to write a novel, and that's how they learned how to do it. And I was like, really? Okay, that's all it takes is one, YouTube video, and here we are, we're all authors. But no, I'm kidding. But I think sometimes that is the first step you have to take. I mean, I'm ashamed to say, not ashamed, but it is what it is. I mean, I don't even think there was the internet when I first started trying to sell. I mean, my first book submission, I had to print out and send via mail in boxes to agents. And I remember like being at the copy store and being like, it's my first novel, telling the guy behind the counter. And I was so nervous. And then it was rejected. everywhere. I did get an agent at the time, but it ended up not selling. And it's hard not to feel like a total failure when you put something personal and creative out into the world and it doesn't land. But I will say, now that I am a publisher and we get pitches all the time, the fact that someone could feel like a failure because we say no is so wrong. They're not failures at all. Like, we are just looking for something very specific. So I know that when we send a rejection note, it has, I mean, sometimes it's because the writing is not up to snuff or the book wasn't like amazing, but many times the book is great and we're just like, that's great, but this is not right for us, but we know it'll sell. And we're like, that should go to this type of house. That should go to this type of house. And if it turns out that the other publishing house that it really should, that it does belong to, doesn't have room that season, or the timing doesn't work, then it might not end up somewhere, but it doesn't make it a bad book. So being on both sides, I see that now, but it's much harder on the author side to believe it. But I can say from the publisher side, it is for the most part true. And if you are worried about whether or not you're a good writer and you're being rejected for your writing, I really suggest to everybody to show your work widely before you submit it for publication. Sarah and Nanda, I don't know if you did this or you workshopped or if you found value in that, but I know from our submissions, it's very clear which ones were not workshopped or which are like more first drafty versus ones where you can tell they've been really sort of massaged to as close to perfection as they can. So you have to kind of know, like, is my work landing with other people? What can I do to improve it? And is it okay to self-publish? And maybe that's the path for me, which is also fine, because to publish commercially means there has to be some commercial potential in the book, which maybe your book doesn't have, but that doesn't make it a bad book, right? Maybe the audience is destined to be small. And so maybe that's just fine, but that would mean that self-publishing might make more sense. I'm curious too in the audience, and feel free, by the way, to put any questions in the chat because I'll just kind of peek over there as I go. If you're interested in talking about fiction versus nonfiction writing, trying to write novels versus memoirs, because for each sort of genre and thing that you're doing, there's kind of a different path to follow. But Sarah and Nanda, did you go out and get feedback? Did you send things in? I mean, I know you did not send things in unpolished because they were amazing. What did you do to sort of whip your manuscripts into shape?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like part of writing is writing, right? And so, like I said, this wasn't the first thing I wrote, and so I feel like my MFA, my personal MFA, was like writing those first 3 novels. This is the 4th novel I've written, and also studying craft books as I went. But in that whole idea of sending it out for other eyes is so important. I feel like we write in caves, we're stuck in our little worlds and we have blind spots. I sought other writers online through Scribophile and critiquematch.com because like I said, I didn't really have a critique group around me. I did years ago when I first started.
Wait, pause for just a second. What are those things? Are they easy?
Okay, so
how did you find
those
them?
are online writing groups, right? The critiquematch.com, it's free. It has a free side, which is what I used, and a paid side where you can pay people to critique your work. But the idea is you say what your work is like, and other people say what their work is like, and then you match up, and sort of like dating, and you see if your work's kind of alike, and I ended up finding like 8 or 10 partners on that website. Whereas Scribophile, it also has a free side and a paid side, and I did the paid side because it wasn't really that expensive. It's you critique other people's work and you get points, and based on the number of points you have, you can have people critique your work. But I found that critiquing just chapters, it forces you to get kind of lost. Unless you're writing short stories and poetry, you get lost in the weeds of your work. And so for me, and I realized that early on with my first works, I would get stuck editing because I'm kind of one of those perfectionists as I go. And I'd be editing a chapter that ultimately might not belong in the novel. And so this work, when, like I said, it hit me around COVID, I needed to write this book. I knew I didn't want critiques as I wrote. Although I'll come back and clarify that. I did have a person looking at the work to force me on, but I didn't get critiques as I went. I needed people to look at it at the end to get kind of this overall developmental feedback. And so I went to critiquematch.com and Scribophile, hoping to find writers who were also in the same boat as me, who wanted to swap entire works. And I did find them. Wasn't easy. It took a couple of months. And I was doing that all while I was writing too. So it wasn't like I started right after I finished the first draft. But I found that feedback the absolute most useful. It was painful. The first round of of my beta readers, I thought, why am I even bothering? They were like, this character's wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong. But you had to let it sit. Everyone was like, the writing is so great, but all of this other stuff was wrong. And it's daunting to go back and fix that kind of stuff because it's developmental, right? And I mean, it domino effect, and you have to change so many other things. But I did that work, because you let it sit and you're like, okay, forget it, I'm done. And then, weeks later, you're like, they're right. And then you get to work. You just can't help it because it's your work. And I did that. I did 4 rounds of that. And I knew I was ready to send it out to agents when the feedback was very small, minor. And that was when I was Googling how do you find an agent? And I went to Query Tracker to look for agents, and I did it that whole way where you go and look at their website and look what they like and try to find agents who would match up to your work, and I started going out. And I think because I did that work of editing, which was maybe 2.5 years of work, I got requests for fulls right away. And then it didn't take, it took me 6 months, but I got an agent in 5 to 6 months. And then you have to edit again with the agent. And so there's that whole round of editing, and then we sold it to Zibby, and then you edit again. I edited with Corey, who is my editor with Zibby, and that's, so there is a lot of editing, and I do think having swapped work with so many other writers, I do think a lot of people are maybe unaware of how much more editing they can do with their work, before they give up, and they that is I think the biggest hurdle after that huge hurdle of writing the first draft.
Wait, Nanda, somebody is asking, did the same group of people read your revisions the 4 times, or was each time a new group of people?
New. I knew I had to get new writers, and I found other ones later on because I went to workshop the work at this community of writers workshop, and I met other writers, and so I found writers other ways too to swap the work. But yes, it was always different. I knew I needed fresh eyes every time. So I had a total of 12 readers.
Wow, that is so smart. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to put it out there. It's because then you have to let go of the magical thinking that actually it's ready and that you don't have to work on it anymore.
And I have to say, one of the surprising things is that some of the best feedback came from writers who were not my genre. People say, be careful who you give your work to, etc. And it's true. But on the other hand, yeah, some of the best feedback came from, other writers who just were not my genre. And
did any of the writers you critiqued in return get their books published?
No, not yet, but they're still working on it. There's two who might be close. One's a collection of short stories, which is kind of close, and one's a thriller.
I mean, send them over if they're good. I'm kidding. I mean, I'm not really kidding, but anyway. How about you, Sarah? Open to critiques, not?
I think I'm not as smart as Nanda in this category, but I did it somewhat differently, I think, because of the order of the time I got my agent. I love my agent, and I got her the exact same way that Nanda was describing, when on Query Tracker and tried to find people that would match what I wanted to do. But I will say, just for those of you, if you don't have an agent, or if that's like in the future for you, one of the really important questions to ask the agent is how much editorial work they do. I think some, and Zibby, I'm sure you see this all the time, I think some agents do none, and therefore are sending out into, into the rounds of selling the book less than your best work, or less than your most sellable work, we could say. And I think some agents are really careful, good editors. I'm a teacher, so I'm pretty, I think, particular about feedback and the way that it is useful or not useful. And I really, really loved my agent's feedback, like more than anything. I was so excited by the way she was looking at the story, which was not a way that I was looking at the story. And because she's trying to sell the story, right? And I'm trying to write the story, and those are different things, I think, sometimes. So to amplify the parts that are most compelling, in terms of the momentum of the story, like that kind of stuff that I maybe wasn't really thinking about. So that's one thing you can kind of like put in your hopper for what kind of agent you want, is to ask them, what kind of feedback do you give? How much feedback do you give? What does it look like? Can you give me an example? Can you let me talk to somebody who that you've worked with, and I can ask them these questions? And a good agent should say, yes, sure, you can talk to these 5 authors, or whatever. So that's one part. The other thing I decided to do, and this is like much less methodical than Nanda, but I did like the sort of results I got, is I sort of picked people that I know, some of whom are professional novelists, some of whom are just people who like to read, some of whom are people who don't like to read, and I picked like a variety of types of people, to see if there was some kind of common feedback. And I'll tell you sort of the funniest example is I have 2 children. I have a daughter who is 19, who loves to read and reads all the time. I have a son who's 21, about to be 22, and would literally rather lick a toilet with his mouth than read. He hates it. So I was like, I will give this book to these 2 people, and my novel, which I did have up here, and I will display as Nanda told me to display. Here it is. It's about 3 mothers, and is not the kind of thing that a 21-year-old, baseball player was really jazzed to read, but he did read it, because I'm his mother. And the kind of feedback I got from those really different types of readers, a person who only reads sort of commercial romance, or a professional novelist, or a 21-year-old kid, or whatever it is, I listened for what are the commonalities, what are the things that give the story its life. I asked questions like, what do you think this story is about? What do you think? What did you want to know more about? Like those kinds of more global things. And I really, really benefited for that. I also am lucky enough my husband is also an English teacher, and he read just so patiently and over again, many, many parts of the novel. And I'm actually really terrible at plot, and my novel has a really thorny plot with a lot of pieces to it. And I would just be like, and what is going to happen when they go around the corner? So he was incredibly helpful. I actually don't think it matters necessarily who the feedback comes from or how much of it you get, it just should feel generative to you, because ultimately at the end of the day you want to submit a novel, a project that you're proud of, that you're happy with, that sounds like you, that isn't like 95 cooks were in the kitchen and created this, Frankenstein's monster business. You want to make something that is right, because it is your work, and there is no reason to do it except that you're making something that you really believe in. So yeah, so the main thing I would say is just the agent thing. I think having an agent that you trust, their vision, and I think most writers, I think Nanda, you mentioned this, do not have a business mindset when they're writing. They're not thinking like, how do I sell this sucker? They're trying to write the story. So to have an agent who can kind of understand that side of it, which I think is really important. And not something I have any access to. I've never picked up a book because I read the blurb, and that, I don't read that way. And so I really had no idea about that side of the business. And then can also, that person with that business head can also make your project the best that it can be. I think is pretty invaluable. So yeah, that's what I would say there. But anything that makes you feel like you're making forward progress is good feedback.
So when I was starting out, again, I took a long break to stay home and raise my kids, but then I wanted to go back out with a collection of essays called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, which I ended up turning into a podcast. But the only reason I did that is because I tried to get some agents and had a few meetings through friends of friends who told me that I couldn't sell a book without a platform. And this was in 2018. Actually, they probably said it in 2017, 2018, doesn't matter, whatever. Because I wasn't on any social media. And even though I had been freelancing since I was in high school, it didn't matter. And so that is why I started a podcast. I also didn't really know anybody in the writing industry. I had my editor who edited my first essay ever in 17 magazine. We're still in touch, actually. So I knew her, and my mom was friends with like 2 authors. So I knew them, but they weren't even writing anything new. And I thought, well, I don't know, I guess I'll just try this podcast thing that a friend suggested and see what happens. It ended up being that the podcast ended up taking up much more of my time and attention than writing. But it goes back to this question of platform, which I think is on a lot of people's minds. And I know that as a publisher, whether or not to look at how big a platform a writer has is a thing. And when we started Zibby Publishing, one goal was to not just take people based on their platform size, which is how we're able to publish debut authors. And I remember with Sarah, I was like, you literally cannot have an Instagram account that is like SM5269732. You have to change your Instagram account. But also looking at, as a publisher, having a list, and there has to be a mix, right? Because it's nice to have some people on the list who have bigger followings. Actually, nobody really has that big a following. I mean, this is not a big priority for us, but it is nice to have a mix. Established writers, like previously published authors, and new authors. And so I don't know, how did the two of you feel about platform, knowing that a lot of places might not have considered your novels, even though they were brilliant, based on that fact?
I can start with that one, because that was actually so funny when Zibby said that to me, because it's true, because I'm a teacher, so I don't want the children on my Instagram, and so I had like a sort of secret, not public one, and with like 80 followers or something, and so Zibby said, oh, you need to make your and you can all follow me now. It would be great, because I still don't have that many followers. Sarah Sawyer, author, go for it. But I think that kind of thing is, I think probably because I work with teenagers, just like not interesting to me, and I don't want to do it. But it's also an important part of the whole part of marketing yourself, and it's a great way to share information about where you are and what you're doing. And I love seeing other people's stuff. So it's like that, oh, thank you. That was very sweet. You guys are going to double my follower count if you all just hop on there. But I think, you know, there are people who, you know, I'm friends with. We were just talking before we went on with an author named Betty Cayuette, who is like one of the first book talkers, and she is amazing at, you know, leveraging her social media presence. But she's also, you know, in her 20s and, you know, can sell products with like herself, which I'm not gonna do. But I think it can be a spectacular tool for reach and influence. Absolutely. But yeah, it definitely was a learning curve for me, because I was like, here are these pictures of my children playing basketball on my private Instagram, you know. Hopefully I'm doing better, Zibby. I don't know.
You were
So
so much better, so much better.
yeah, and Zibby definitely they definitely uh, buy books or from authors who have zero account. I had zero social media and online presence, zero. And so much so that when you Googled my name, I don't know if you guys Googled me when you bought my book, a bunch of male Indian faces showed up if you Googled Nanda Reddy before.
Got
I,
mixed. You were in like a witness protection program. It wasn't really your name. There was like you had scrubbed the internet clean. There were no references at all.
I was nowhere, literally nowhere online. And it's because I was nowhere on. I mean, I just like Sarah, it was nothing I was really interested in. It felt you know, icky. And also it's distracting. It's just so distracting. And I'm easily distracted. I think I have ADD. And so I didn't want to, but I went out with my agent. When I went out, she said, you know, I think it's not really a big deal because you're a fiction writer, but we did have a lot of editors who read my book who said, well, who is she? I can't find her. And I don't know if that was part of the reason they didn't take me on, because after Zibby acquired me, and actually my very first post on Instagram, that's where I decided to join, is that acquisition that the like acquisition notice and the excitement of being picked up after and like trying to work at it and build a small following. I realized how important it is. I actually, being Guyanese, I really only know my family in Miami, the Guyanese family there, and so I don't have a huge network of even Guyanese people. I don't know the writers and the readers who are Guyanese, and so I was able to meet them through Instagram. And actually, I just went to New York and met a bunch of artists, and we did this a big event, and it was all through Instagram. I would have never done that had it not been for social media. I would not have met those people and been invited to do that, and been able to reach out to the Queens, the little Guyana community in Queens, had it not been for that, because I am so isolated over here in Reno and had been so isolated online. And how do you meet people, right? And so I have learned the value. I've also, you know, met people who promote books, book accounts, because that's mainly what I follow. I decided I'm only going to follow book accounts and pay attention to book things. And I'm going to occasionally show a little bit of my private life, because you learn, because there's like an algorithm thing. I mean, if you guys are all on social media, that's shows you what people actually look at, and what they actually look at is that stuff. If you go on vacation and you post some pictures, they definitely look at that. But if you're like, oh, these are the 5 books I recommend this month, they're like, yeah, okay. But it's sort of interesting what they actually look at. So you do have to kind of do a little bit of that, which is weird.
Wait, are you suggesting we post more vacation photos?
No, I do what's comfortable, but I have found that like that's what people look at, is they like when they like to see a little bit of your life. Because that's, I mean, again, I am like Sarah, I don't have a huge account. I've recently gone over the 1,000 mark, and that was actually because of that thing in Little Guyana, and meeting all of the artists that are Guyanese. I met lots of them, and they are the ones that pushed me over that mark. And actually today it went up a little bit more, because on Instagram I met another author who's Indian, and because it's Asian Pacific Islander month, she suggested doing this big promotion and this giveaway, and I was like, sure. And people have to like you and follow you to be to enter. And so suddenly I'm getting all of these followers. I don't know if they're going to stick around afterwards, but you know, it's you realize it's part of selling the book. I mean, there's all of that stuff you do to write the book and get the agent and then sell, you know, have the agent sell the book to a house. And then there's this whole other world of, well, there's you know, so many books that come out every month and you're competing with them all and you have to have visibility. And it's really hard to have visibility when you're like, even if you have good reviews, I mean, and even if you have, people are liking it, it's really kind of interesting, and so you do have to play that social media side a little bit.
I actually really like what you're saying also about niche, because sometimes the more specific you get, the better. Like the Guyanese community, the Guyanese author community. Like if you find a place where you feel like, oh, this is so me, you're going to get a lot more uptick from the crowd versus like, I'm going to appeal to literally everybody. Everyone's going to love my book. I'm not going to limit it. Right. So if you have like with marketing anything, right. But it's good to know that.
Yeah,
So,
no, for me, it's been the community, the Caribbean community, the Guyanese community, they're all starting to find me, in the Indian community, the Indian diaspora, right? Because yeah, and that's just been an interesting thing to watch and be part of.
so I'm wondering from the audience, the Zoom audience here, there should be a different name for that. I'm hoping that we are giving you the kind of information you were hoping when you signed up for the Zoom. Do you have any questions for us or things we might not have covered that you're curious about? You can put them in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can not ask anything, and I can just keep talking and asking questions myself. But does anyone have a question? Yes, go ahead. Beverly?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm writing a memoir. I'm also a writing teacher. So I have a lot of readers among my students, and I've been doing this for a very long time. But I'm curious, Zibby, how much of a book do you want complete as a publisher?
Um, as much as possible.
So you want a complete manuscript. I mean, I know we go into editing and all of that stuff, but you're not looking for bits and pieces.
I mean, you could send just a chapter or two, and if we like it, we'll ask for more. You don't have to lead with the whole thing, but
Okay.
you will be evaluated against other people who have sent us the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how well do we think this person can do based on the information we have
Mm-hmm.
versus this, we have this here. So, you're setting yourself up for a better chance if you write the whole thing, versus if you send a proposal. That said, I've tried to sell many things on proposal because I just keep hoping that that's going to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I am sort of in your camp, but it's better to have the whole thing. It really
Mm-hmm.
is.
Good. Thank you.
Heather?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. Shout out to Nanda. I'm from Barbados, so it's great to see. I my question has to do with, oh, and Zibby, great work that you're doing with the publishing house. I wanted to ask about your policy or your feelings around short story collections or linked story collections or novels in stories. I've been querying agents and I've gotten some really great feedback, which is, oh, we really like the collection, or we see it more as a short story collection. But if you have a novel, we'd love to see that. And I think that short story collections deserve some love. More love in the publishing arena. And I know I get the feeling that you're trying to be somewhat of a disruptor. And I'm wondering what your feeling is and your team's feeling is around short story collections, which to me have their place. They're vital in the literary canon. But I'd just like to hear about your feeling around short story collections or novels in stories, which are slightly different, more cohesive. And
So
also about, yeah, like what are you sensing from the market generally regarding those? Thank you.
yeah, sure. We just published a short story collection actually, called The Goodbye Process, and it became a USA Today bestseller, and got nominated for awards and longlisted for things, and we're really proud of that. I think, again, to my point earlier about having a mix, like there has to be a mix. We can't have all short story collections. I mean, I guess we could, but then we wouldn't be who we are. But short story collections are great. Traditionally, they don't sell as well as novels. There is a much bigger appetite in the market for readers of fiction. That said, we're about to come out with a poetry collection too, because it's beautiful and let's try it. And I believe in it. And there's an audience for everything. So I think it's I think it's a balance. I think for the right story collection or the right poetry collection, it's nice to throw it in the mix. We don't have hard and fast rules. We have more hard and fast rules, at least at my publishing house, about wanting it to be mostly contemporary versus like, multi-family sagas starting in the 1800s. Like we like to have books that are helping people live now, sort of that usually take place in the now. There can be some in the past, right? Both of these women, like some of the stories in the past, but it can't all be in the past. Sort of how I feel about that. And we don't do like romantasy or, we like real stories about real people,
Thank
relationships,
you.
love, all that.
Thanks a lot.
No dragons today. Yes, Fran, go ahead. Fran, if you have a question.
I think our question is in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm getting lost in a project I started a few years earlier. I've lost my forest amid the trees. Who or what type of person can help me? The writing is great. It's just not adding up. Well, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. It sounds like you need a developmental editor, and that is a job that people have, that they help people with exactly what you have, disparate parts of a story, trying to put it together. You can Google, I don't know, these girls probably, Nanda and Sarah, you probably have better resources than I do. I worked with developmental editors and trusted friends, and they were like, this is the person. And I was like, okay. And that's how I did it. But how have you found, I mean, through us, we provide that kind of editing, but it's usually further along in the process, so we don't usually have to do that. Have you found resources to find?
I haven't used a developmental editor, but I think it would be a great thing to do to sort of help with what you're describing, because I do think I always describe writing, sometimes it's like, I don't know if you shop at TJ Maxx ever, but you go in there and it's like the thing is you're in the mirror and you're like, does this look good, or is it just that I like it because it costs $7.99? I can't tell. Like, it's very hard to tell, I think, when you are making something yourself, like what actually needs to be done. And a developmental editor, I think, could really help you. I think it depends on kind of I think that's an important relationship. So I would just say, like, as I was saying with agents, you have to really trust the person. So you'd want to know like what your questions are for that person, like what is your process, what this looks like. I think it's also, it's costly is another thing. And that's not nothing. So that's something to be kind of aware of, is like, people people don't do this stuff for free. So I think you just want to be really careful and just really know what you want to get out of it, kind of as you're in the process of hiring someone, if you choose to do that. The other thing, though, I would say, though, is that, like, sometimes a piece of writing is telling you something, right? That you can hear yourself. Like if you feel like you're lost in the weeds, I think it's a very good idea to put that aside for a while, till you can look at it with like clearer eyes, you know, and you're not so in it that you kind of can't see what's making it not work for whatever reason. That's like very ordinary advice, but I do that all the time. I started something a couple months ago, and then I was like, something is wrong with this, and I'm gonna go back to it when the school year is over. I sent part of it to my agent, and she's like, this is great, I can't wait to see more. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna have to wait a while because I don't know. You know, I think that's fine. You know, to put things aside is all I would say.
So can I just ask, so how do you go, what do you actually do to find a developmental editor? Again, it's not the writing, it's not even the ideas, which are funny and good and original. It's really, what is this messy thing? You know, like, where does it need to be? What,
I would go even to the resources, the Critique Match and Scribophile, and the ones that already suggested, even though those are more critique partners, you could always start there with what do you see is missing, right? You might not need to hire someone full-time. You might just need a few, you know, people in the industry or whatever who are doing the same thing who could say to you, okay, I see where this is, and all that. You know, there's
could you just repeat those resources? Because I came in late, so I didn't get them. Are they on the chat or anything?
But you know what? I'll repost them down here.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, keep going. I interrupted you.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I think you just want other people to read it, and it's always easier for someone else, I think, to see where the holes are, and at least start there, and start going to conferences or going to writing events where you meet people. There's so many literary festivals. I would highly recommend doing that if you're working on something. They're all over the country, and you just go and meet people and go to panels and just start meeting people in the same world. And it can't do anything but inspire. There's some questions about self-publishing versus traditional publishing. You know, I have our publishing house is traditional publishing. That said, there is completely a place for self-publishing. Someone also in the chat asked about funding to self-publish. There really isn't exactly a place to get funding to self-publish. There are some hybrid publishers. There are places where you pay some and they pay some. You can sort of Google the different outlets that can do that. I do think that if you have an audience that you know you can market the book to and you want to get it out quickly, often if you can do a proof of concept and the book hits big enough, it will get picked up by a traditional publisher. That's not a common route, but it does happen. And it's fast. And you're in full control of it. You make more money, apparently, if you can sell the same amount because you own more. I'm not telling Sarah and Nanda to now go self-publish, but you know, there are definitely arguments for that. I think the days of it being, you know, so much less prestigious, I think those days are over. I think there are really strong arguments to be made in favor of both ways of publishing. The name of the short story collection I published is called The Goodbye Process. And there was one other question in the chat that, no, I think maybe I got them all. Did I miss anything? Okay, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you all so much for this panel. And I'm glad that you called on me because on the chat, I was trying to write Zibby and it kept autocorrecting to Libby. Anyway, I'm wondering, how do you view agent submissions versus non-agent submissions? I saw that you do accept non-agent submissions. Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
We prefer agented submissions because it means that the manuscript has gone through the type of rounds that Sarah was talking about earlier when she, you know, Nanda, like usually the editor, it means that someone else out there has already identified talent and they have probably made it better than it was before. That doesn't mean we only take things by agents, but do we, you know, it's just like another plus in the column, right? It's like sending in a college application without the letter of recommendation from the teacher, right? It helps, right? It makes it a little more complete. That said, you could still have an outstanding candidate and they'll get in, but typically just send in the letter. Maybe that's a bad example. I think it also shows you've gone through a huge hurdle, which is finding an agent, right? That's really hard. But if you feel like you've done, I mean, you're definitely welcome to do it, to take a shot and send it in. We will get to it, you know. I think to have a submission stand out, just remember you're sort of competing, so to speak, for attention among very polished works as well, like some of which come in with blurbs already, or really well edited, or so just make it as polished as it can be, and make a good case for how you're going to help too. And I'm sorry, Nanda and Sarah, I feel like I'm talking so much.
No, I was just gonna add like one little thing about what agents can do. It's not easy to get an agent at all. And I know plenty of authors who write extraordinarily well and don't have an agent yet. It really does take some time and some luck, I think. But I also think the agents do a lot for you in the process, and I can't even kind of imagine doing the process without an agent. They're like hugely your advocate, you know, as you work through a contract. Ideally, you work through a contract. They are, you know, pitching your book in a way that is understanding the market. They really do earn their keep, or they should, right? So you know, I think it's possible to do without, for sure, but I think at some point eventually, if you got picked up, you would want to get an agent, because it is important to have somebody whose only interest is to be in your corner, right?
Okay, last question. It looked like Jay was raising his hand. Just unmute yourself, Jay.
Yes, thank you. I'm writing a fictional memoir, and is there such a term used anymore of experimental writing? I mean, is that kind of an old-fashioned idea, or does it mean anything anymore?
There is, for sure, experimental writing. Yeah, that's a term.
And how would you describe it?
When you play with form in some way, when you're doing something a little bit different, experimental, I don't know, you know,
I
like
would say, you know, you just said you said realistic memoir, or a memoir, but that's fictional.
A fictional memoir.
Okay, so Lion, we did this retreat recently, and I read Lion by Sonia Walter, and she wrote a brilliant fictional memoir. It's all true but fictionalized, and so that is that I would say you could read. And then experimental fiction, Headshot, was just nominated for, I don't know, Booker or one of those awards, and has almost like no plot. And Orbital also recently won a big award, and both of those are very experimental in that they don't follow that traditional plot. They have gorgeous writing, and then they ended up winning these awards, but they don't have a plot. Those are two that popped into my head, and when you said that, and to the
What was
lady
the
who
one
was
by Sonia?
Lion.
Thank you.
that was a great book. That was really lovely.
Thank you.
Well, I think our time is just about up, but if you have other questions, you can always send them to info@Zibby Media, and we will try to get back to you quickly. We do read them, info@Zibby Media. Please follow Sarah and Nanda. Check out their books, A Girl Within a Girl Within a Girl. And
We should hold them up, Sarah.
oh yeah, send them up again. And actually Sarah's is coming out in paperback, right? Isn't that like next month or something? Very
I
soon.
think it's June 23rd, maybe.
Yeah, June 23rd.
So you don't have, it's not so heavy.
And thank you so much for having us, Jennifer and team.
Yes, thank you so much, Zibby, Nanda, and Sarah. And Nanda and Sarah, congratulations on your books. That's amazing feat. And thank you all for your words about the publication process. I know that everybody's processing them. I just also want to shout out for the Fine Arts Work Center online program. We have a lot of mentoring services that we're going to be making available coming this July that could address some of the questions that you have or the needs that you have for editing, editing memoirs or novels or short stories or even poetry collections, because poetry came up as well. So check out our upcoming offerings in July. We're going to have so much more. We're kind of having a refresh, and we want to help folks make their dreams come true and publish their words, you know, because everybody's story is just unique and amazing, and we want to help you get it out there, just like Zibby does, and with all that she does. So we're going to just end things now. Take a look in your email tomorrow, and you'll see the recording of this, and you can go over everything. But if you have any questions about some things that were mentioned today, you can email me, jjean@fawc.org. Thank you so much, everyone. You have a great night and a great weekend.